My name is Aria Middleton, and I'm 25 years old. If you looked at my life on paper, you'd probably think I'm doing fine. I work at a marketing firm downtown in Philadelphia. I have my own small studio apartment, a decent salary, and a LinkedIn profile that makes it look like I've got everything under control. But pieces of paper don't show you the parts of your life that hollow you out from the inside. They don't show you what it does to a person to spend 15 years competing with someone else's pain. My little sister Jenna entered the world 2 months early, blue as a robin's egg and terrifyingly still. She spent the first years of her life in the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, hooked up to more tubes and blinking machines than I could count. I remember standing on a chair, pressing my hands to the edge of her crib, staring at the plastic oxygen mask fogging with each fragile breath. Back then, everything in our lives revolved around her survival. Mom and Dad camped out next to her bed. Nurses knew them by name. Our kitchen table turned into a cluttered command center of pill organizers, appointment cards, and insurance forms. I was the healthy one, the lucky one, the one everyone said should understand. When Jenna finally came home for good, when she no longer needed oxygen tanks or feeding tubes, Mom and Dad were still stuck in crisis mode. If she so much as sniffled, they'd put their lives on pause. If she pointed at a toy, they bought it. If she whimpered, I was called in like backup. Aria, honey, can you skip the movie tonight and stay with Jenna? She's not feeling well. Aria, your sister is in pain. Don't you think your friends can wait? At first, I thought it was right. She had been that sick baby in the hospital, the one we weren't sure would make it. Saying no felt like betraying her. So I skipped birthday parties. I missed sleepovers. I learned how to measure medicine in plastic syringes and how to hold a cold washcloth against her forehead in the middle of the night. I loved her. I really did. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. Jenna got older, stronger. The doctor said words like stable and normal life. The oxygen tanks disappeared from our living room. The machines went back to the hospital. At school, she ran and laughed like everyone else. Her pain, however, didn't disappear. It evolved. It started small. A headache on the night she had algebra homework. A stomach ache when she was supposed to help clean up after dinner. Mom would whisk away her textbooks and replace them with a blanket on the couch, a bowl of Ben& Jerry's, and hours of Netflix. She's pushing herself too hard, Mom would murmur, stroking Jenna's hair. She's been through so much. By the time Jenna turned 11 and I was 16, she had perfected her act. And I say act because that's what it became, timed, polished, and disturbingly effective. Her pain always seemed to arrive right when something good was finally happening to me. When I made varsity soccer at Lincoln High, I remember the feel of the crisp fall air in my lungs as I warmed up on the field. Mom and Dad were in the stands, waving, faces lit up with pride I wasn't used to seeing directed at me. For once, I wasn't the one who needs to understand. I was just Aria, who had worked hard and made the team. 10 minutes into the game, Jenna doubled over in the bleachers, clutching her stomach. Right side, I remember noticing, even back then. From the field, I watched Mom stand up so fast her coffee spilled. Dad's face turned to panic. They left before the first half ended, hustling Jenna out while she whimpered and leaned dramatically into Mom's side. Later that night, I found out the doctors couldn't find anything wrong. She's fragile, Mom insisted when I asked. You don't know how it feels in her body. When I got accepted into Penn State, my guidance counselor hugged me in the hallway. I felt like the world was finally opening up. That night, we went to Olive Garden to celebrate. I can still smell the garlic bread and hear my uncle's loud laugh over the clatter of dishes. For one bright, shining moment, all eyes were on me. 5 minutes later, Jenna collapsed at the end of the table. Same thing, the right side, the trembling voice, the pain rated 8 or 9 out of 10 on that medical scale they use in hospitals. We ended the night at the ER at Jefferson Hospital. Again, the doctors found nothing wrong. Again, I swallowed my disappointment while everyone hovered around Jenna's bed, whispering about how hard her life had been. The worst part wasn't the ruined events. It was the way Jenna would sometimes look at me when no one else was watching, quick, sharp, and triumphant. A tiny curve at the corner of her mouth. Not relief, not fear. Satisfaction. Once I caught her alone in the bathroom, practicing expressions in the mirror, frowning, clutching at her chest, tilting her head just so. She didn't see me at first. When she finally did, she dropped her hand and went limp against the sink. Are you spying on me? She snapped. I saw you, I said quietly. You were practicing. Her eyes filled instantly, almost on command. Wow, Aria, I'm in pain all the time, and you think I'm, what, Pretending? You're sick. By the time Mom and Dad came in, I was the villain in the story. Jenna told us what you said, Mom whispered later that night. You can't punish her for needing help. You sound jealous, Arya. That's not you. I started to realize that in our house, intention didn't matter. Evidence didn't matter. What mattered was the story everyone had already decided to believe. Jenna was the fragile miracle. I was the strong one, the one who should know better. I tried to date like normal people do. I met Connor in my sophomore year of college. Sweet, funny, the kind of guy who remembered my coffee order and texted me good luck before exams. He liked my ambition. He liked that I had plans beyond our hometown. For a while, Jenna acted like she was happy for me. She'd tease me about him, ask to see our selfies, laugh at his dumb jokes when he came over. I thought maybe things were finally normalizing between us. Then, 8 months into our relationship, he asked to meet at the Starbucks on Market Street. His message had that flat, ominous tone you recognize even before you're old enough to name it. We sat at a small table by the window. The smell of burnt espresso and sugar clung to my clothes. His hands were already wrapped around his phone like it was evidence. Arya, he said quietly, I don't think I can do this anymore. It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. What? Why? Did I do something? He slid his phone across the table. On the screen were screenshots of messages from an account with my photo and my name. They were brutal. I called Jenna a faker, said I wished she would disappear already, made fun of her for being pathetic and needy. The words crawled under my skin, wrong, poisonous. I would never say this, I whispered, my throat going tight. Your username, your picture, your way of texting, Connor said, hurt flickering across his face. She showed me, Arya. She said you were different when it was just the two of you, that you hated having to take care of her. She? I repeated, my heart starting to race. Jenna showed you this? He nodded. I'm sorry, I can't be with someone who treats their sick sister like this. I walked out of Starbucks feeling like my chest had been scooped out with a dull spoon. Later that night, my phone buzzed. It was a selfie of Jenna in my Eagles hoodie, the one Connor had given me for Christmas. Her hair was thrown over one shoulder. Her smile was razor sharp. Cute hoodie, she'd typed. Fits me better anyway. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not in a screaming, plate-throwing way. Something colder, quieter. A part of me just shut off. For 5 years, I had watched her steal everything that mattered to me. My games, my celebrations, my relationships, my reputation. Every time I tried to speak up, I was painted as the jealous, ungrateful one. So I stopped trying to convince anyone. Instead, I started watching. Really watching. I watched the way Jenna's hand always went to the same place, her right side, no matter if it was a migraine, stomach pain, or kidney ache. I watched her always call for Mom first, never Dad. I listened to how the pain was always an 8 or 9, never a 6, never a 10. Drastic enough to sound serious, not so extreme that it sounded theatrical. And I noticed something else. She always got better in exactly 2 to 3 hours. 2 to 3 hours of canceled plans. 2 to 3 hours of everyone hovering around her while my moments bled out quietly in the background. The more I paid attention, the less guilty I felt, and the more one question started to burn in my mind. What if I could prove it? Not just accuse her, not just cry about it, prove it. I didn't know how yet. I just knew one thing. If Jenna could turn pain into power, I could turn the truth into something just as dangerous. And one Sunday night, around Grandma Betty's massive oak table in Germantown, I was finally going to stop letting my sister's pain run my life. Once I let myself stop feeling guilty long enough to really observe Jenna, the pattern came into focus like someone twisting a camera lens until everything snapped into sharp detail. Every single time she was in pain, it was the same choreography. She always grabbed her right side. She always called for Mom first, never Dad. She always rated her pain between 8 and 10, and she always recovered in 2 to 3 hours. Always. It didn't matter if she was complaining about a headache, her stomach, her chest. Her hand drifted to the same exact spot like it was muscle memory. The words changed. The performance never did. At first, I wrote it off as coincidence. Human bodies are weird. Pain is unpredictable. Maybe I was seeing patterns because I wanted to. So I started writing it down. I made a note in my phone every time she had an episode. Date, time, what was happening just before it started, what part of her body she grabbed, what number she gave on the pain scale, how long it lasted, and whether the doctors found anything. 3 months in, I scrolled back through the notes and felt my stomach turn. Soccer game, college acceptance, first day at my new job, the day Connor came over to meet my parents for the first time. Every single major moment of my life had a corresponding Jenna Payne event attached to it. Right side, 8 or 9, mom first, 2 to 3 hours, no medical findings. It was like watching a magic trick you'd fallen for your entire life and suddenly seeing the strings. But there was still this small, terrified part of me that whispered, what if you're wrong? What if some of it is real? What if you're the monster everyone says you are? That voice kept me up at night. So I decided if I was going to accuse Jenna, not just to her face, but in front of everyone, I needed more than a gut feeling and some notes on my phone. I needed proof. That's where Jake came in. Jake and I met at work. He was the kind of tech guy who could fix a crashed computer in 10 minutes and then spend the next 20 complaining about the company's outdated firewalls. He had a soft spot for underdogs and a talent for getting into places he technically shouldn't. One evening after work, we grabbed takeout and sat in the tiny park behind my apartment building. The autumn air was cool, and the orange streetlights made everything look slightly unreal. So, Jake said, chewing slowly on a fry, you're telling me your sister is basically weaponizing fake pain to ruin your life? When you say it like that, it sounds insane, I muttered. Insane doesn't mean untrue, he pointed out. What do you have so far? I showed him the notes in my phone, the timeline, the hospital visits, the way every episode lined up perfectly with something important to me. He whistled low. That's a lot. I can't go to my parents with this, I said. They'll say I'm paranoid, or jealous, or cruel, again. Jake leaned back, eyeing me for a long moment. What if you didn't just tell them, he said. What if you showed them? I looked at him. Show them what? Jenna clutching her side for the 100th time. Patterns, he replied. Evidence. You said there was that whole thing at your high school graduation, right? When she collapsed and they rushed her out before you got your diploma? Yeah, I said slowly, my throat tightening at the memory. She disappeared before my name was even called. High schools have security cameras, Jake said, especially near auditoriums, side hallways, back exits. If she was prepping for her little stunt, there might be footage. It took a few weeks of quietly coordinating, a favor from a former classmate who worked in the IT department, and Jake doing whatever digital magic he does when he says, don't worry about it. But eventually he slid a USB drive across my kitchen table. Brace yourself, he said. We watched it together on my laptop. The footage was grainy, black and white, timestamp ticking in the corner. A side hallway near the water fountains at Lincoln High, 5 minutes before the ceremony. Jenna stood alone, scrolling on her phone. Then, suddenly, she put the phone away, checked both ends of the hallway, and turned toward the glass trophy case like it was a mirror. She started practicing. She clutched her chest, frowned, tilted her head, tried different ways of collapsing against the wall. Then she moved to the floor, experimenting with falling sideways, forward, backward. She did it over and over, adjusting little things, like she was choreographing a dance. I watched the younger version of my sister, in the dress she'd worn to my graduation, practicing how to faint. My hands shook on this keyboard. Still think you're crazy? Jake asked quietly. No, I said, my voice flat. I think I haven't been nearly paranoid enough. He didn't laugh. What about Connor? He asked after a moment. You said she used messages to break you two up. I don't know how to prove that, I said bitterly. The account's gone. The fake messages, everything, it's just gone. Nothing's ever really gone, Jake murmured. Did Jenna have her phone set to sync stuff to the cloud? Backups? If she used your laptop or any shared device in your house, some of that data might still be floating around. The next few weeks were a blur of careful, secretive digging. Jake walked me through how to check old device backups that had been automatically stored. He showed me logs, timestamps, little digital fingerprints left behind by someone who thought deleting an app meant erasing history. It didn't. We found fragments of the fake Instagram account she'd made with my picture and name, registration details, login times, IP addresses that matched my parents' house while I was at work. We pulled partial message threads, enough to see the tone, the phrasing, the direct attacks on her own fragile health written in my voice. Look at the timestamps, Jake said, zooming in. She waited until your shift started before sending these. She knew exactly when you'd be gone. There was a pit in my stomach so deep I thought I might fall straight through myself. Then Jake did one last thing. Her phone, he said. If she has cloud backup turned on, and you ever had access to her login, even once, I stared at him. She asked me to help her with her email last year, I whispered. She was freaking out about losing her selfies. I logged into her account on my laptop. Jake smiled grimly. Then let's see what your sweet little sister's been saying when she thinks no one's listening. From Jenna's cloud backup, we recovered audio messages she'd sent to her friend Chloe. One in particular made my blood run cold. It was her voice, bright and casual. It's really easy, Chloe, she said. You just have to know which buttons to push. Mom goes crazy if I say it's a headache on the right side, but if I say it's stomach pain, she takes longer to react. And it always works better when Arya's having a good day. Then everyone feels sorry for me and thinks she's being insensitive. Chloe laughed. You're terrible. Jenna giggled. Please. Arya had everything growing up. This way I get a little attention too. And it's fun watching her get so frustrated. You should have seen her face when Connor dumped her. I stopped the audio. My hands were trembling. This is enough, Jake said softly. Arya, this is more than enough. But I knew my parents. If I sat them down privately and poured all of this out, they'd find a way to minimize it. Say Jenna was confused, exaggerating, going through a phase. They would cry and apologize and then beg me not to destroy the family by confronting her in front of everyone. I didn't want apologies whispered in the kitchen and secrets buried under casseroles. I wanted sunlight. So I started thinking like Jenna. She used timing as a weapon. She hijacked moments to redirect all attention to herself. If I wanted the truth to land where it needed to, I had to choose my moment just as carefully. That's when I remembered our monthly family dinner. Once a month, like clockwork, my entire extended family gathered at Grandma Betty's house in Germantown. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends. 20 people crammed around her massive oak dining table, the one that had been in our family for generations. It was loud, chaotic, and impossible for anyone to pretend they hadn't seen something. If I could predict Jenna's pain there, in front of everyone, and show them I'd predicted it before it even happened, she wouldn't be able to wriggle out of it. Not this time. The plan came together in my head so neatly it scared me. First, I would make a false announcement, something big enough to threaten Jenna's monopoly on family attention, but harmless enough that when the truth came out, no one would feel truly betrayed. A promotion. At dinner, I'd stand up, clink my glass, and announce I'd been promoted at work. I'd describe a raise, a new title, new responsibilities I didn't actually have. I already knew how my family would react. Proud, excited, loud. More importantly, I knew how Jenna would react. Before all of that, 20 minutes earlier, I would record a video upstairs at Grandma's house. In the video, I'd explain the plan and predict exactly what Jenna was going to do. Right side, 8 or 9 on the pain scale. Ask to lie down. Mention the hospital if it didn't improve in 20 minutes. Call for mom first. Recover in 2 to 3 hours. I would timestamp it. Show the background so they knew it was filmed before dinner. Play it in front of everyone while Jenna was mid-performance. Jake stared at me when I told him. You're really going to do this? He asked. Yes, I said. My voice didn't shake. I'm done being the villain in her story. If she wants a performance, I'll give her one she never forgets. He nodded slowly. Then back everything up, he said. Twice. And whatever happens, Arya, don't let them gaslight you out of what you've seen with your own eyes. Last Sunday, the night of our monthly family dinner, Grandma Betty's house smelled like roasted chicken, fresh rolls, and the faint lemon cleaner she used on her floors. Laughter echoed down the hallway as relatives arrived, coats went on the rack, and voices overlapped. 20 minutes before dinner, I excused myself, my heart pounding. I walked upstairs to the bathroom, locked the door, stared at my reflection in the mirror, and lifted my phone. Okay, I whispered to myself, showtime. I hit record. The bathroom light above Grandma Betty's mirror flickered twice before settling into its usual yellow glow. I stared at my reflection, hair brushed smooth, mascara barely holding together, the faintest tremor in my hands, and pressed record. It's 6:40 p.m., I said quietly into the camera, keeping my expression steady. In 20 minutes, I'm going to make a false announcement downstairs. I'm going to tell everyone that I got promoted at the firm. That part is a lie. I paused, inhaling. But the reaction that comes after, that won't be a lie. That's the part I'm predicting. Jenna will wait until the applause dies down. Then she'll grab her right side, always the right side. She'll rate the pain an 8 or 9. she'll whisper for Mom. She'll need to lie down, and if the pattern holds, she'll ask to go to the hospital in 15 minutes. I stepped aside so the background, Grandma's guest bathroom, the little floral hand towels, the framed watercolor of Lake Wallenpaupack was clearly visible. Time-stamped, I said softly, and let's see if I'm wrong. I saved the video, hid it in a folder labeled insurance forms, checked the lock twice, and walked back downstairs. Grandma's dining room was already humming when I returned. 20 people packed shoulder to shoulder around the massive oak table that had survived 5 decades of birthdays, Thanksgiving arguments, Christmas puzzles, and at least 7 spilled gravy catastrophes. The chandelier glowed warmly overhead, illuminating faces I had known all my life. Aunt Susan told Grandpa Joe to stop eating the rolls before dinner. Uncle Tommy was describing, yet again, how his new boat was not over budget, Betty. That's just what good engines cost these days. Mom was laughing, shoulders relaxed for the first time in weeks. Dad passed a bowl of mashed potatoes with a mock serious, "Do not drop this. Your grandmother will disown us." And Jenna was at the far end of the table between our cousin Derek and Aunt Susan. She was absent-mindedly swirling gravy around her plate, humming softly, the picture of carefree innocence. I felt the air shift the moment she noticed me. Her eyes flicked up, cool and assessing, like a cat sensing a mouse entering the room. I forced my smile, forced my heartbeat to slow, forced myself to sit down and join a conversation about my cousin Ashley's new job in the fire department. But every time I glanced over, Jenna was watching me, waiting. Dinner was almost served when I rose from my seat. I didn't even need to tap my glass. Just the scraping of my chair made the room fall quiet. Can I have everyone's attention?" I said, raising my wine glass slightly. 20 heads turned toward me. Grandma Betty clapped politely, thinking I was about to make a toast. Aunt Susan whispered, "Oh, a speech," and nudged Derek. Even Dad smiled proudly. For a few precious seconds, the room was filled with nothing but anticipation. I let myself enjoy it, just for a moment. "I wanted to share some good news," I said, projecting my voice just enough to reach both ends of the table. I got promoted to senior account manager at Henderson & Associates. There it was, a detonation of joy. Uncle Tommy slapped my back hard enough to make me lurch forward. Ashley squealed. Mom's eyes filled instantly with tears. Grandma grabbed my hand and said, "I knew you'd move up fast. My smart girl." I felt myself glowing. And then, as if someone dimmed the lights inside her, Jenna froze. A subtle shift in her expression, a tightening around her mouth, a flicker of calculation behind her eyes. I saw it happen in real time. Her smile, genuine for half a breath, collapsed into a thin line. Her gaze drifted around the table, registering how every person was looking at me, not her. And then her fork slipped from her hand, hitting her plate with a quiet clink. Derek turned to her. "You okay, Jen?" She gave a small, trembling smile. I think so. Just a little pain." Her hand drifted, slowly, delicately, theatrically, to her right side. Right, on cue. I didn't let my face move, not even a blink. Aunt Susan leaned toward her, voice rising. "Sweetheart, what's hurting?" Jenna winced, curling slightly in her chair. It's here," she whispered, pressing into that familiar spot. It came out of nowhere. Mom stopped laughing mid-sentence. Her whole body went rigid. The color drained from her face. "Jenna," she said, already halfway out of her chair. I could practically see Jenna turning the dial up another notch. It's really sharp," she breathed, blinking rapidly. I think it's getting worse." The table shifted like a school of fish, abruptly changing direction. All eyes swung toward her. The room filled with overlapping murmurs. "Do you need water? Should we call someone? Is it your appendix? Mom, she needs to lie down." Dad stood, already grabbing the keys from the hutch. "Jenna, sweetie, on a scale of 1 to..." "It's 8, she whispered. "Maybe 9? Of course it was. Never 7, never 10. Always 8 or 9. It was like watching a magician do the same trick over and over, except the crowd never learned. Jenna let out a shaky exhale. "Mom, I think I need to lie down." Her voice trembled in that perfect performative way she had mastered years ago. Not too dramatic, not too soft. Just distressed enough to activate everyone's panic instincts. Mom hovered, hands shaking. "Should we take her to Temple Hospital? Susan, can you drive? I can't think straight." My family was already rising, preparing to abandon the dinner. Abandon my promotion. Abandon me. Again. I stood slowly. Calmly. Deliberately. "Wait," I said. My voice didn't waver. The room stilled. Even Jenna, mid-performance, looked up at me with a sudden flicker of something sharp beneath the surface. Fear. Before we go rushing her to the hospital, I said, lifting my phone, there's something you all need to see. Jenna's face didn't fall. It cracked. Aria, she breathed, her voice hollowing out. This isn't the time. Oh, I said, unlocking my phone. It's exactly the time. Mom looked between us, confused and panicked. Aria, sweetheart, what are you doing? I raised my phone. I recorded something 20 minutes ago, I said. You're all going to want to watch this. Jenna's hand remained pressed to her right side, but her eyes were wide now, stripped of the suffering sheen. She knew. She knew exactly what was coming. And she also knew she couldn't abandon the act without exposing herself. Checkmate. I tapped play. My voice echoed through Grandma Betty's dining room, steady and deadly clear. It's 6:40 p.m. In 20 minutes, I'm going to make a false announcement. The room froze. Grandpa Joe stopped breathing. Grandma's fork midpoint to her mouth. Aunt Susan's hand flew to her chest. Dad's keys slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor. And Jenna will wait until the applause dies down. Then she'll grab her right side. All eyes turned to Jenna. Her hand was still pressed to that exact spot. She will rate the pain an 8 or 9. The air thinned until it felt like we were all inhaling dust. She will ask to lie down. Someone gasped softly. And she will suggest the hospital if it doesn't improve in 15 minutes. Silence. No one moved. No one blinked. No one spoke. Jenna sat frozen, caught mid-performance, the spotlight glaring too bright for her to escape. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I lowered the phone, my heart thumping like a slow, heavy drum. That was just the beginning, I said. And Jenna flinched. Hard. The silence in Grandma Betty's dining room was thick enough to taste, like the air before a thunderstorm breaks. 20 sets of eyes shifted between my phone and Jenna's crumpled form at the end of the table. She still had her hand pressed to her right side, but now it looked wrong, like the gesture didn't belong to her anymore, like she was wearing someone else's body. Aria, Mom whispered, voice trembling. What is this? I'm not done, I said, my tone sharper than I intended. But I didn't soften it. I was beyond softening. Dad stepped closer to Jenna, his protective instinct twitching, like a reflex he couldn't turn off. Maybe this is some kind of misunderstanding. No, Dad. I lifted the phone again. There's no misunderstanding. I scrolled to the next file, the one Jake had pulled from Lincoln High's archive server. Do you all remember my graduation day? I asked. How Jenna fainted right before the ceremony, how she was rushed out, and none of you were there when they called my name. Mom's face crumpled with guilt. Dad's jaw tightened. Jenna's eyes, wide, glassy, terrified, shot daggers at me. I tapped play. The grainy security footage filled the room with the soft whir of static. A hallway at Lincoln High, empty, except for a 15-year-old Jenna. In a dress, perfectly healthy, perfectly composed. And then she began to practice. Gasps rippled around the table. There she was, checking the hallway. There she was, turning toward the trophy case like a mirror. There she was, practicing different ways to clutch her chest, then her stomach, then her head, and then a rehearsal of fainting, falling sideways, forward, backward. Each attempt more refined than the last. Oh my God, Aunt Susan whispered. Grandpa Joe muttered something in disbelief. Ashley covered her mouth, eyes huge. Mom stumbled back a step, tears spilling. No, Jenna. Tell me this isn't... Jenna shook her head, shaking so hard her hair fell into her face. I didn't... But her voice was thin, unstable, cracking like thin ice under weight. Remember Connor? I said, my voice steady now. How he broke up with me because of screenshots Jenna showed him. Jenna's head jerked. Stop! I ignored her. This is what she didn't expect me to recover. I opened a folder labeled Archive Messages. Jake had helped me retrieve them. Timestamps, IP logs, fragments of what she thought she'd erased forever. On the screen were messages full of cruelty, written in my name. She made a fake Instagram account using my photo, I said. Sent messages pretending to be me. Made me look like a monster. I displayed the timestamps. Look, she sent them when I was at work, when she knew I wasn't home. She used my laptop, my picture, my phrases. Dad took the phone from my hand, his fingers trembling, and scanned each line. His face twisted in horror. She even used your slang, he murmured. She researched your texting style. Mom whispered, Jenna, sweetheart, how could you? But Jenna said nothing, only blinked rapidly, breath shallow, trapped in a cage of her own making. Then came the final blow. Last month, I said, Jenna forgot to log out of her cloud backup on my laptop. I retrieved a voice recording she left behind. Aria, stop! Jenna screamed. I tapped play. Her voice filled the room, high, relaxed, smug, like she was discussing the weather. It's really easy, Chloe. You just have to know which buttons to push. Mom goes crazy if I say it's a headache on the right side, but if I say it's stomach pain, she takes longer to react. Mom gasped like someone had slapped her. Dad's face turned dark and still, a storm waiting to break. And it always works better when Aria's having a good day, Jenna continued on the audio. Then everyone feels sorry for me and thinks she's being insensitive. Chloe giggled. You're awful. No, Jenna said in the recording. I'm smart. Aria had everything growing up. This way I get attention too. And it's fun watching her get frustrated. You should have seen her face when Connor dumped her. The recording ended. Silence. A deadly, irreversible silence. Mom fell into a chair, sobbing openly. Dad looked like he'd aged 20 years in 5 seconds. Grandma Betty clutched the table, whispering prayers under her breath. But Jenna broke. She shoved away from the table so fast that Derek barely caught her before she staggered. Her eyes were wild, rimmed red, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Fine, she screamed, voice cracking. Fine. Do you want the truth? I faked it. Sometimes, not always. But you don't understand. Her voice dissolved into a manic tangle of words. You've always had everything, Aria. Everything. You were smart and pretty and perfect. And I was, what? The sick baby? The charity case? The little miracle who had to stay fragile so you could stay perfect? Her chest heaved. You think it's fun watching you be the star? You think I didn't notice the way Mom looked at you? Proud. Relieved. Like she finally had one normal child? Because I was never normal. I had to work to get attention. I had to make people notice me. That's not attention, I said quietly. That's manipulation. It was the only thing that worked, she shrieked. Do you know what it's like to live in your shadow? You didn't even have to try. Her knees buckled, and she sank to the floor. She whispered. I just wanted someone to choose me. Her voice broke entirely. In the heavy, stunned silence, my mother whispered, 15 years, Jenna. 15 years we worried, canceled plans, rushed to hospitals, lost sleep. I lost pieces of my life. I lost pieces of mine too, I said coldly. 15 years of moments that were supposed to be mine. 15 years of being cast as the cruel sister. 15 years of being blamed for not mothering you enough. Jenna sobbed harder, curling into herself on the hardwood floor. Around us, relatives backed away from her, some in shock, some in disgust, some unable to even look at her. Grandma Betty, who had always defended Jenna, sat frozen, lips quivering. Jenna, she whispered, voice shaking, how could you do this? To your sister? To all of us? For the first time in her life, Jenna had no answer. I stepped back from the table. My voice was steady when I said, you all know now. You know who she really is. You know what she did. I grabbed my purse from the back of my chair. Mom looked up desperately. Aria, what are you doing? Leaving, I said. I'm walking away from this circus. From her. From all of it. I should have done it years ago. I headed toward the door. Behind me, Jenna's sobs deepened into something raw and broken. No performance, no act, no manipulation. Real pain. Real consequences. Real truth. But I didn't turn back. Not even when she screamed my name. Not even when Mom cried harder. Not even when the door swung shut behind me with a hollow thud. For the first time in 15 years, my sister's pain didn't trap me. It set me free. When the door closed behind me, the cool night air hit my cheeks like a slap. Sharp, sobering, almost cleansing. Grandma's porch light hummed overhead, flickering faintly around the edges. The muffled noise inside the house, my mother crying, Jenna's panicked sobs, relatives scrambling, faded into a distant, chaotic blur. For the first time in years, I wasn't running toward Jenna's pain. I was walking away from it. My feet moved on their own, brisk and certain, down the cracked stone path that led to the street. I didn't even grab my jacket. The autumn wind cut straight through my sweater, but it didn't matter. My chest felt hot. My mind felt clear. Freedom, real, terrifying freedom, always comes with cold air. I reached my car and leaned against the door, hands trembling violently, now that the adrenaline was wearing off. The porch door swung open behind me, and for a moment I wondered who would come out. Mom, Dad, Grandma, Aunt Susan? But no one came. Maybe they were too overwhelmed. Maybe no one knew whom to comfort. Maybe they were finally looking at Jenna without the filter they had used for 15 years. Or maybe, for once, they knew I needed space. I got into my car, closed the door gently, and let the silence wrap around me like a weighted blanket. Then, without warning, I started to cry. Not from guilt, not from fear of what would happen next, but from release. 15 years of swallowed anger, forced understanding, and being the strong sibling finally poured out in thick, silent tears that left hot streaks down my face. I cried for the soccer game I never finished, for the Penn State dinner I didn't get to enjoy, for Connor, who never believed me, for every hospital trip, every blame-shifting conversation, every time someone said, "Aria, be nicer, she's sick," for the girl I had been, who tried so hard not to let resentment turn her into a monster. I cried until my ribs hurt. Then I exhaled, long and slow, until I felt steady again. Though I wasn't inside, I could imagine what was happening. I knew my family well enough to fill in the blanks. Mom would be kneeling beside Jenna, torn between comforting her and processing the truth. Part of her would be furious at Jenna, at herself, at the years lost to fear and guilt. But another part, the mother part, would still want to pick Jenna up off the floor and pretend everything could go back to normal. Dad, always the problem solver, would be pacing, angry at himself for not seeing it sooner, at Jenna for manipulating everyone, at me for holding the mirror up so brutally. He'd be questioning every medical bill, every ER visit, every time he'd been guilted into choosing Jenna over me. Grandma Betty, Jenna's most faithful defender, would be sitting rigidly in her chair, whispering, oh Lord, how did we not see?" Aunts and uncles would be whispering in corners, torn between shock and fury. And Jenna would be feeling something she had spent years avoiding, being looked at, really looked at, without sympathy. No performance, no script, no spotlight she controlled. Just the truth, ugly, undeniable, inescapable. For the first time, she would be sitting in her own pain instead of using it as a weapon. I turned the ignition, and the engine hummed quietly. My hand still shook a little as I shifted into reverse. As I backed out of Grandma's driveway, my phone buzzed in the passenger seat. It was Mom. Then Dad. Then 3 texts from Grandma, 2 from Aunt Susan, 1 from Ashley, even Derek. All of them unread. I didn't open a single one. Not yet. Not tonight. I let the phone buzz itself into silence as I drove through Germantown, streetlights flashing across my windshield like brief, electric ghosts. The roads were mostly empty. The farther I got from Grandma's house, the more my shoulders loosened. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Puffy eyes, smudged mascara, and a strange, unfamiliar expression. Strength. Not hardness, not bitterness, just strength. I barely recognized myself. My studio apartment in West Philly had never felt like a sanctuary before. It was tiny, a little cluttered, with a wobbly dining table and a single plant I kept forgetting to water. But when I opened the door and stepped inside, it felt like crossing a border into a new reality. I set down my keys, took off my shoes, turned on the lamp beside my couch. Soft light filled the room, the warm, quiet kind that makes you exhale without realizing it. Then I walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Cars streamed past, people laughed on sidewalks, music thumped faintly from a bar down the street. Life was moving, messy, loud, indifferent. My life, without being hijacked, without being rewritten by Jenna's imagination, without feeling like the supporting character in someone else's never-ending drama. I breathed deeply, chest expanding in a way it hadn't in years. After half an hour of silence, I finally picked up my phone. The screen was filled with notifications, calls, texts, even a few voice messages. I didn't open Mom's message, or Dad's, or Grandma's. Instead, I opened the very last one at the bottom of the list. From Jake. Jake, you okay? I'm proud of you. That took guts most people don't have. A laugh, small and tired, escaped my lips. I typed back, me. I don't know if okay is the right word, but I feel free. He responded almost immediately, Jake. Then it was worth it. I looked at that message for a long time. He was right. It was worth it. I walked to my small dining table, pulled out a notebook, and opened to a blank page. For years, I had filled journal pages with rage I felt guilty for, tears I hid, questions I swallowed. But tonight, I wrote one simple sentence. This is the day I chose myself. The pen hovered for a moment. Then I added, and I'm not going back. As I closed the notebook, I realized something. Sometimes the truth tears families apart. Sometimes it shatters the version of someone you thought you knew. Sometimes it hurts more than any lie ever could. But sometimes that pain is the first honest feeling in the room. And sometimes breaking something toxic is the only way anything real can grow in its place. Tonight I didn't destroy my family. I finally stopped destroying myself to protect them. And as I turned off the light and crawled into bed, my last thought was simple. Tomorrow, I get to start a life where Jenna's pain no longer controls mine.